The southwestern edge of India is a narrow coastal strip, defined by a sharp topographic transition from the open ocean to a steep mountain wall. To the east, the Western Ghats form a near unbroken barrier rising up to 8,000 feet. For centuries, these ridges shielded the region from the political upheavals and imperial expansions that defined the history of the Indian interior. To the west, the landscape opens completely. The coastline meets the Arabian Sea, placing the region at the edge of a maritime frontier that linked it directly to the markets of the Roman Empire, Arabia, and China. This physical isolation allowed for the evolution of social systems found nowhere else on the subcontinent. Without interference from northern powers, the region developed institutions like Maro-Makatayam, a formal system of matrilineal inheritance, as well as unique martial and temple arts. This topography created a historical paradox, a territory that remained politically insulated from its own continent, yet was one of the most deeply integrated nodes in the ancient global economy. This geographic isolation meant that Kerala did not produce the kind of centralized indigenous chronicles found in other early empires. There is no single master text that records its ancient timeline. To reconstruct this past, historians must triangulate the truth across three distinct categories of evidence. The first consists of indigenous records, the classical Tamil and Sanskrit poetry composed by local scholars. The second comes from the sea, the accounts of global merchants and geographers who visited these shores over 2,000 years. And the third provides the physical proof, archaeological data in the form of coins and stone inscriptions. Because of its physical location, Kerala's history cannot be read in a single book. It must be assembled from these global and local fragments. Until the 20th century, early history relied on the Parasurama legend and the Keralopathy, texts claiming the land was a supernatural gift from the sea. Modern historians, including Professor Ilam Kulam P.N. Kunjan Pillai, systematically moved away from these accounts in favor of verifiable data. Analysis shows these traditional texts were often written centuries after the events they describe. They functioned as tools to establish social hierarchies, rather than as objective chronologies. Reconstructing the real timeline required dismantling these entrenched myths to clear the ground for evidence that can be cross-checked and dated. The earliest indigenous data is found in Sangam literature, a body of Tamil poetry spanning the first 5 centuries AD. Works like the Patitupatu provide the structure for early political history, detailing the lineages and military campaigns of the first Chera kings. Over time, the literary record transitioned towards Sanskrit, reflecting the changing cultural landscape of the region. A major development was the 11th century Mushakavamsa. This work provides the first independent dynastic history of a local kingdom, predating even the famous chronicles of northern India. However, while these texts provide names and narratives, they rarely provide absolute calendar dates. To anchor these stories in time, historians must look to the observers arriving from across the Arabian Sea. Local literature supplies the actors and the events, but it requires external evidence to fix the historical clock. The arrival of global trade was driven by the monsoon winds. In 45 AD, a pilot named Hippalus identified how these winds could be used to sail directly across the open ocean, ending the need for slow, coastal-hugging voyages. This brought the first wave of classical geographers, such as Pliny and Ptolemy, who documented the precise locations of major ports like Muziris and Tindus. The economic driver was pepper. At its peak, this trade was so significant that Roman writers complained of the drain on the imperial treasury, as gold was sent eastward in exchange for the spice. In the medieval era, a second wave of merchants from Arabia and China, including the famous traveler Ibn Battuta, documented the rise of Calicut and Quilon. These traders used wooden dhows to maintain a continuous record of the coast, providing a steady stream of external verification for the region's economic growth. This chain of foreign accounts verifies the scale of the trade, but it still requires physical evidence to confirm the exact timeline. While written records can be shaped by the objectives of their authors, physical artifacts provide fixed points that are independent of narrative. Numismatic evidence provides some of the clearest data. Large hoards of Roman Vulden silver coins have been found at sites like Ayal, with dates ranging from 117 BC to 123 AD. These coins prove that the trade networks mentioned by classical writers were historical realities, not just travelers' tales. Beyond coins, historians look to epigraphy, the study of inscriptions carved into stone and copper. Key documents include the Teresapali copper plate from 849 AD and the Jewish copper plate of the year 1000. These plates are royal contracts that confirm the existence of powerful merchant guilds like the Anchuvanam and Manigramam, who managed international trade. They also provide evidence of the social climate, showing that local rulers formally granted rights and religious protections to minority communities. Coins and inscriptions provide the physical anchors that turn subjective literature and travelers' logs into a verifiable history. When we align these three pillars, the timeline becomes clear. Linguistic patterns in Saindam poetry can be matched to the dates on Roman coin hoards, allowing us to place early kings in their correct century. The descriptions left by Arab geographers are cross-referenced with the ruins of coastal forts, confirming shifts in regional power and trade. On its own, any single source is an incomplete fragment, but cross-referencing them creates a rigorous chronological model. The history of Kerala is a composite image, built piece by piece from global and local evidence. Ultimately, this method of historical study is a direct result of the region's geography. The mountain wall preserved a distinct local identity, protecting the region's social systems from being absorbed by inland empires. Meanwhile, the open sea ensured that its history would be recorded by observers from around the world. To study Kerala is to study a region where the geography preserved the culture, but where the history was written by the entire globe.